Ever hear about that music star whose fancy car was just found empty by a lonely road, like they just floated away on the breeze? No more songs, no more shows. For these black musicians, the music just stopped. These are the black musicians that vanished and were never seen again. First, Robert Johnson. Way down in Mississippi back in 1938, this young blues dude, Robert Johnson, was crazy good with a guitar, like scary good. Then, bam, he just drops. One second he's singing about horrifying hellhounds on his trail. The next, he's gone. And get this, he was only 27. No doctor, no real reason why. Just whispers, dark whispers. People said maybe that deal he supposedly made with the devil down at some lonely crossroads, where he traded his soul for that insane guitar talent, finally caught up to him. You sell your soul sooner or later, the bill comes due, right? See, folks said Johnson wasn't always a guitar whiz. Nope, not even close. The story goes he was kinda terrible at first, then he vanished for a bit. Some say a few weeks, some say longer. When he came back, he could play like no normal person could learn that quick. It was like magic or something much, much darker. People who saw him play said he'd stare off into the distance, like he was looking at someone or something that nobody else could see, like he was taking orders. And his songs? Man, they were full of bad luck, scary dreams, and a feeling like he knew he was doomed. Me and the devil blues, hellhound on my trail. Was it just a stage act, or was he singing about his own terrifying pre-written fate, a story he couldn't escape? The official word, if you can even call it that, was that somebody poisoned him. Maybe a jealous husband whose wife Johnson was getting a little too friendly with slipped something nasty into his whiskey at a sweaty, smoky juke joint. They say he was in terrible pain for days, crawling on the floor, howling like an animal. But here's the kicker, nobody ever got in trouble for it. Not a soul. His death paper? Just a cheap piece of paper with more questions than answers. For years, nobody even knew for sure where his body was buried. Some say a pauper's grave, unmarked. Others whisper about 3 different grave sites, like even in death, he couldn't find peace, or maybe someone wanted to make sure he stayed lost. But another rising star's last performance would be cut short by real-world hate, leaving behind chilling whispers of sabotage and a crime never solved. 2. Jesse Belvin. February 6, 1960. Little Rock, Arkansas, a real nasty, hateful place for black folks back then, a powder keg ready to blow. Jesse Belvin, a smooth R&B singer with a voice like velvet and a string of sweet hits like Goodnight My Love, had just done something brave, something dangerous. He'd played the city's first ever concert where black and white people were actually allowed to be in the same room, together. You could feel the hate simmering in the air that night. Some real mean, ugly-hearted white folks had already tried to mess with the show twice. Hours later, Jesse, his young wife Joanne, and their driver, found in the twisted, smashed-up metal of their Cadillac. All of them gone, just like that. The cops were super quick to call it an accident. Sad story, sleepy driver, car went off the road, case closed. But some people who saw the wreck, even a state cop, they saw something else, something that made their blood run cold. The tires on Jesse's shiny Cadillac looked like someone had messed with them, one guy was quoted as saying. Cut, punctured, the kind of dirty trick that sends a speeding car flying into disaster, especially on a dark, lonely highway. Jesse Belvin was a black man hitting it big, getting famous all over the country, daring to sing his love songs for black and white folks right in a town that hated the very idea of it. Was that bravery enough to get him taken out, his life stolen? Other singers, like the great Jackie Wilson, were so sure it was foul play, not just some random accident, that they wanted real answers, a real investigation. But nope, nothing happened. No arrests, no serious questions asked by the people in charge. Just another oops, a sad accident involving a black star who dared to step out of what some folks thought was his place. Some goodbyes are loud and violent, like a car wreck in the dead of night. Others are quieter, like a slow fade to black, a super talented guy just drifting away from the world he helped create until he's more like a ghost story than a real person. 3. Henry Grimes. Get this, you're a super cool, way out jazz bass player in the wild 1960s, jamming with all the musical giants, dudes like Albert Ayler, Cecil Taylor, Don Cherry. You're not just playing music, you're making new sounds, pushing the limits, part of a whole jazz revolution. Then, poof, you're just gone. No note, no see you later, no nothing. For almost 30 long years, Henry Grimes, a real big deal in that experimental avant-garde jazz scene, just wasn't there anymore. Did he just get tired and walk off into the sunset? Did he join some secret silent club? Or did something really bad, something nobody talked about, happen to him? The music world was totally confused. Like, huh? What happened to Henry? How could a player that good, that important, just disappear off the map? No goodbye tour, no I'm tired, I'm retiring letter to his fans. One day he's laying down these crazy new bass lines that nobody had ever heard before. The next, people only said his name in quiet, hushed whispers like they were talking about a ghost. Everyone started to think the worst. He must have passed on, another sad story of a music guy who lived too hard, too fast. His special bass guitars? Sold off or just lost somewhere? His name started to fade from the history books, just a, hey, whatever happened to that Grimes dude? Kind of question. Then, way later, in 2002, this social worker guy named Marshall Murat, who also happened to be a huge jazz fan, started poking around. He didn't believe Henry was just gone forever. Armed with just an old address from decades ago and a strong gut feeling, he actually found him. And get this, Henry Grimes wasn't hiding out in some secret exotic spot. He was living in a tiny one-room apartment in Los Angeles, working a regular tough job as a laborer, and get this, he didn't even own a bass anymore. He hadn't played his music, the music that made him famous, for ages and ages. Life had been super tough on him, yeah, but he told people he didn't plan to disappear forever from music. He just sort of drifted off, got lost in the shuffle of life. But what about a firecracker queen of raw funk music who just decided to walk away from her own superstardom, choosing to be totally quiet instead of super famous and loud? 4. Betty Davis. Okay, just try to imagine this lady, Betty Davis. She sang and growled funk music so wild, so raw, so nasty, with a capital N, that it made grown men turn red and the music police totally freak out. She was even married to the super famous jazz guy Miles Davis for a while, and she hung out with other music legends like Jimi Hendrix and Sly Stone. Her live shows? Man, they were like wild, crazy parties, explosions of pure, super strong girl power and take no prisoners attitude. Betty Davis wasn't just a little different or ahead of her time back in the 1970s. She was like she came from another planet, a funkier, fiercer one. Then, just when her music was getting really big and influential, she just slammed the door on the whole thing, shut, locked it up tight, and pretty much threw away the key for good. After making 3 albums that were so cool and out there, they became cult legends. They Say I'm Different, Nasty Gal, You Gotta Hear 'Em. And after a bunch of live shows that either totally scared people or made them go absolutely crazy with excitement, Betty Davis just vanished from the music scene around 1979. And it wasn't like she slowly faded away. It was a full, hard stop. No more interviews, no new songs being made, nobody saw her perform. Nobody even really saw her. It was like the ground just opened up and swallowed her whole. What happened? Did the music bigwigs, too scared of how powerful and outspoken she was, secretly tell everyone not to work with her anymore, blackballing her into oblivion? For almost 40 long years, she lived a super private life in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. People whispered all sorts of crazy stuff. Was she really mad at the world? Did she end up with no money? Had she gone a little bit nuts from all the pressure? The truth, when little bits and pieces of it finally started to come out in articles and a documentary before she passed away in 2022, was, like always, more complicated than the rumors. She just really, really wanted her privacy and wanted to be remembered her own way, not how some record company wanted to sell her. She chose to walk away, all by herself, from a music world she found was often unfair, fake, and not very creative. Choosing to be quiet and live a private life is one thing, a person's own decision. But what if you're a star, super famous for breaking down walls for black people on TV, and then some powerful, sneaky people in the government suddenly shove you out of the spotlight, making your whole career disappear into a horrible, chilling fog of political craziness and fear? 5. Hazel Scott. Imagine being so good at what you do, so incredibly talented and charming, that you become the very first black American to have your very own TV show on a big national network. That was the reality for Hazel Scott back in the 1940s and early 1950s. She could play the piano like an absolute dream. She was a fancy, glamorous singer, a Hollywood movie star, and on top of all that, she fought hard for civil rights and equality. She wasn't just a star, she was a super bright, shining beacon. Then, the creepy, ugly shadows of the Red Scare and McCarthyism started creeping in, and her light, her amazing career got turned off by the folks in charge, like systematically and really meanly. Did she just kind of drift away from fame on her own, or did they actually make her disappear from the American spotlight? Hazel Scott wasn't the type to be scared or quiet. She told Hollywood and other powerful places off, loud and clear, for being racist and unfair. When those crazy McCarthy witch hunts started, where they accused all sorts of people of being communists, her habit of speaking her mind, and the people she knew made her a big, fat target. In 1950, her name showed up in this nasty little book called Red Channels, which was basically a blacklist of artists they thought were secret communists or sympathizers. She even went to Congress, to the House Un-American Activities Committee, and bravely told them off, saying she wasn't a communist, but that they were being bullies and ruining people's lives. Didn't make a lick of difference. Her TV show got canceled just a few days later. Suddenly, nobody wanted to hire her. The amazing, groundbreaking career she'd built all by herself, brick by important brick, started to fall apart right before her eyes. Kind of forgot about her, or never even got the chance to know her. She didn't physically disappear like a missing person who was never found, but her career in America was pretty much assassinated by politics. They pushed her out, they shut her up, they made her disappear right when she was at the top of her game. It was a vanishing act pulled off by fear, hate, and political power. A body silenced by sickness, a career cut short by a stroke, is a sad, quiet kind of vanishing. But what about a voice so powerful, a life so full of promise, that its sudden, violent end inside the cold, hard walls of a prison? 6th, Little Willie John. Man, his voice, it was something else entirely, super strong, like a hurricane, but it could also break your heart into a million pieces with its sadness. Those weren't just songs he sang, they were like raw, emotional bombs he dropped on you. Little Willie John was a small guy, pint-sized even, but he had this giant, colossal talent. He was a huge R&B star back in the 1950s, hitting the charts with big songs before he was even old enough to be legally out of his teens. But here's the thing, his temper was as fiery and explosive as his singing, and a life that burned that bright, that fast, was almost bound to have a dark, early, and really, really weird and unsettling ending. Was it just a terrible mistake that landed him in trouble? Or did someone somewhere decide this troublesome, too talented star needed to be permanently gone from the picture? Back in 1964, he got into a nasty fight up in Seattle, and another guy ended up fatally hurt. Willie John always said it was self-defense, that he was protecting himself, but the law didn't see it that way. He got charged, and in the end, he was found guilty of manslaughter. The whole story of what really happened that night is kind of fuzzy, with different people telling different versions of the events. He got sentenced and sent off to the tough Washington State Penitentiary. Imagine that. This R&B king, this guy who used to make crowds go absolutely wild all over the world with his voice and his moves, was now locked up behind bars, just another number. But the real mystery, the part that still makes folks get quiet and whisper, is what the heck really went down inside those horrible prison walls. In May of 1968, when he was only 30 years old, just a baby really, with so much music still in him, little Willie John was declared dead in the prison hospital. The official reason they gave? A heart attack. But hold on, for a young guy, pretty healthy overall, even if he was in prison, a sudden heart attack? Rumors started flying faster than his hit records used to. Did the guards treat him bad? Maybe too rough? Did he not get the right kind of medical help when he needed it? Did his tough guy reputation from his life on the outside somehow lead to deadly trouble for him on the inside, with other inmates or even the system itself? His family and a whole lot of his fans who loved his music never ever fully bought that official heart attack story. It just didn't add up. There were too many unanswered questions, too many creepy, dark feelings about his last days on Earth. He didn't just disappear from a stage one night, his life got snuffed out, ended, in a place where secrets are super easy to hide and the truth can get buried deeper than any grave. But some artists, well, they don't even need walls to disappear. They just build their own, brick by reclusive brick, hiding themselves away until the entire outside world, with all its noise and fame, is just a faraway, faint echo. Siedmi D'Angelo. People weren't just calling him a good singer, they were calling him the new king of soul music, the savior even. His album Voodoo, which came out in the year 2000, man, everybody loved it. Critics went totally nuts for it. He won a bunch of Grammys. It was a true masterpiece, mixing up all kinds of cool sounds in a way nobody had heard before. D'Angelo, with his super cool, handsome look, a kind of mysterious vibe that made people even more curious, and a voice that could make solid ice melt into a puddle, was all set to be one of the R&B and soul superstar, ruling the music world for years and years to come. Then, right after all that huge success, and especially after a super famous, super intimate music video that maybe made him too famous and turned him into a bit of an intimate symbol whether he wanted it or not, he just pulled back. Like way, way back. For almost 14 incredibly long years, everybody in the music world and all his fans just waited and whispered and wondered, what in the world happened to D'Angelo? Where did he go? Now, he didn't disappear from life itself. Nobody filed a missing person report. But man, oh man, did he ever pull a stunning vanishing act right from the very top of his game, from the peak of his profession. They say the crazy pressure of being this huge idol he never really wanted to be, all the attention on his looks and his body after that one particular video, untitled How Does It Feel? You know the one. Plus some personal struggles with bad habits and not so good substances, and him being a guy who wanted every single note to be absolutely perfect. All of that stuff played a part in his long disappearing act. He'd supposedly show up at a recording studio, get people all excited that new music was coming, then nothing. Radio silence. Years would go by with just little tiny hints and rumors of new songs. Was he stuck with no new ideas coming? Was he fighting some really tough personal problems? Demons too fierce for him to beat while still being famous? Or had the tough, often greedy music business just chewed him up and spit him out like yesterday's news? Those lost years of D'Angelo, when nobody knew what he was up to, became a huge music legend all on their own. Fans would listen to his old album, Voodoo, over and over, trying to find secret clues in the lyrics about where he was or what he was thinking. Him being so quiet, so hidden away, just made him seem even more mysterious and almost mythical. When he finally made his big comeback in 2014 with that amazing album, Black Messiah, it was like he'd risen from the dead, a musical resurrection. But those 14 years of him being mostly silent, him choosing to hide away from all the fans who adored him, and from a music biz that was desperate for more of his magic? Yertam Sanar. This guy, Sun Ra, he wasn't just your average band leader or piano player. Oh no, he was like a full-blown space philosopher, a cosmic poet, and get this, he straight up said he was an angel sent down from the planet Saturn on a special mission to spread peace and understanding throughout the universe using his band, which he called the Orchestra. Born with the regular Earth name Herman Poole Blount, Sun Ra became one of the absolute weirdest, most creative, and busiest guys in the whole history of jazz. His music? It was a wild, happy, sometimes super loud and noisy mix of old-timey swing, fast bebop, totally free-form jazz that sounded like pure chaos to some, and a whole lot of ancient Egyptian magic and mystery. It was as strange, wonderful, and out of this world as he looked and acted. But here's the big question that still makes people scratch their heads. Did he really, truly believe he was from outer space? Or was this whole space angel thing just a giant, elaborate, lifelong act, a performance art piece that basically made him disappear from the regular everyday world and turn into a living myth? From way back in the 1950s, right up until he went back to his home planet, which is how some of his followers talked about him passing away. In 1993, Sun Ra and his always-changing orchestra, seriously, new people were coming and going all the time, lived together like a big, unique family, almost like a little, peaceful, music-making cult. They were all totally dedicated to his one-of-a-kind musical vision and his strange space philosophies. They wore these crazy, shiny, pharaoh-style space Egyptian outfits, complete with capes and headdresses. They would chant weird space poems during their shows. They basically created a whole universe of sound and ideas that was completely their own, nothing like anyone else was doing. He even claimed that when he was younger, aliens had actually abducted him and taken him to Saturn, where they gave him secret instructions for his life's important mission. He wasn't kidding either. He went to court and legally changed his name from Herman Poole Blount to Lasonia Ra. So, to a lot of people, it was like Herman Blount had really vanished off the face of the Earth, and this new, amazing, possibly alien space being had shown up in his place. The whole mystery of Sun Ra wasn't really about where'd he go, because he was always around, playing music, making records, leading his orchestra. It was much more like, who was this guy for real, deep down? Was he a super genius who saw music and life in a way nobody else could? Was he maybe a little bit crazy, bless his heart? Was he a brilliant trickster, just playing a long game with everyone? Or was he a real, genuine wise man, a visionary who had somehow tapped into some kind of secret knowledge from beyond our earthly understanding? But sometimes the vanishing is all too real, all too tragic, and all too final, leaving behind only a name carved into the cold, hard stone of an unsolved case, a story with no ending. 9. Charles Cuckoo Davenport. The old days of American blues and folk music are just packed full of these shadowy mystery men, traveling musicians whose lives weren't written down much, if at all. Their amazing stories and their one-of-a-kind songs were mostly just passed down through a handful of super old, scratchy records that barely survived, and by things people just said and remembered. Charles Cuckoo Davenport is one of these ghostly figures from the deep past. He was known for a really unique and kind of startling style. He played some mean blues guitar, but then he'd do this surprising, almost bird-like yodel right in the middle of it all. That's probably how he got the Cuckoo nickname from the sound he made. He managed to record a few songs way back in 1929 for old record companies like Brunswick and Vocalion. Tracks with names like Cuckoo Blues and Alabama Strut still sound like absolutely nothing else you've ever heard from that time. They're kind of haunting, super weird in a cool way, and totally captivating once you hear them. And then, after those few songs hit the world, nothing. Just silence. After he made those few records, Charles Davenport pretty much completely disappears from any kind of historical record we can find. Where did this guy even come from before he made those strange and wonderful songs? And maybe even more puzzling, where in the world did he go afterwards? Was Cuckoo Davenport even his real given name, or was it just a cool stage name he made up for a musician who maybe preferred to stay unknown and mysterious? Did he keep playing his unique music in his local area, with no one around to record him for history? Did he pass away young and unexpectedly, which was sadly common for a lot of folks, especially traveling musicians back in that era and in that part of the country? Or did he just get tired of it all and decide that his short, strange little dance with the record business and trying to get noticed was more than enough for him, and he just went back to a quiet, regular life? The world of super smooth, polished 1960s soul music also had its own lineup of stars who seemed to just step right out of the bright spotlight and into an unnerving, unsettling quiet, their once bright careers cut short by powerful forces nobody ever saw or fully explained. 10th, Sly Stone. Man, he was like a rainbow suddenly splashing color all over a boring gray world. Sly Stone, the absolute genius behind Sly and the Family Stone, was the guy who took funk, rock, soul, and psychedelic sounds, threw them all into a blender, and came out with music that was all about everyone getting along, being together, and also totally blew your mind into a million pieces. He was an unstoppable, joyful force in the late 1960s and early 1970s. Songs like Dance to the Music, Everyday People, and Family Affair. These weren't just tunes you tapped your foot to, they were full-blown anthems for a generation. But here's the worst part. The higher and brighter he flew with his musical spaceship, the harder and more catastrophically he was destined to crash back down to earth. He didn't just vanish into thin air like a magic trick. He disappeared slowly, tragically, into a thick, dark, suffocating fog of being paranoid all the time, hooked on bad stuff, and feeling so terribly, heartbreakingly alone. The recording of his famous album, There's a Riot Going On, while a lot of critics now say it's a dark, twisted masterpiece, was like a chilling, direct reflection of the complete chaos and darkness that was going on inside his own head and his life. For decades and decades, Sly Stone became a true, vanished legend. People whispered all kinds of crazy rumors about where he was and what he was doing. Some said he was living in a beat-up van, totally broke, a forgotten ghost haunting the dirty fringes of the very music industry he had helped to build and revolutionize. He did make a few sporadic, often really puzzling and kind of sad, public appearances in his later years. But the bright, joyful genius who had brought so much happiness and groundbreaking innovation to the world had effectively been lost, gone, vanished for a huge, long stretch of his life. But what happens when a musician, right at the absolute peak of their powers, making hit after hit, makes a deliberate, almost defiant choice to simply step away from the whole hit-making machine, leaving the entire world to scratch their heads and wonder why?